I'd like to start this meeting of the UDC for April 11th, starting at 6:35. Could we have roll call?
Douglas Gasek,
Here.
Jim Sawhill, Andrew Garcia,
Here.
Jeff Dinwiddie, Thomas Tiber, Steve Pratt,
Here.
Lori Abel,
Here.
Laura Minsky,
Here.
Monica Sullivan. Here. Mike. Oh, sorry.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it appears that we have a quorum this evening. So I would like to hear if there are any changes to the agenda. Hearing none. Well,
There's no motion.
okay. Yep. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the minutes from Wednesday, December 14th, 2011. Have a motion for approval? Or are there any changes?
Motion.
Okay. Can I have a motion for approval of the minutes? Is moved by Commissioner Garcia, second by Commissioner Pratt. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? No. I figured not. Hearing none, are there any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next, that brings us to disclosures. Do any commissioners have disclosures to make for the case this evening?
Are they not showing up?
No.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, no, it is. Okay. Commissioner Minsky?
I would like to disclose that the client, UAA, for the case that we're about to hear tonight, is also a client of the company that we work for, and that we have several ongoing projects with them currently, including a project directly south of this site for review, the MAC housing renovation project.
Okay. No, do you have any, do you have any financial, let me get to my questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have any direct financial interest in this particular case this evening?
I don't think so. I mean, no, not in this particular case.
Seeing that there's none, I'd like to see if a member of the board would direct Commissioner Minsky to participate in this case number 2011-141. Moved by Commissioner Garcia and seconded by Commissioner Pratt. Would you like to speak to your motion?
As Commissioner Minsky appears to not have any financial interest in the case we're about to discuss, I don't think that she should be excluded from participating in the discussion of this case. Many of us work for companies that have clients that we see and come before us, and barring there being a financial interest, in the past we have not excluded members from participating in specific cases.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Hearing none? No. Okay. So that brings us to a vote. Are there any objections? Okay. Are there any objections to the motion to direct Commissioner Minsky to participate in case number 2011-141? Seeing none, you're directed to participate in that case. Are there any other disclosures for this evening? Would you like to speak?
Oh, there you go.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I would like to disclose that I wasn't present on the February 08 meeting. I went online, listened to the tapes, and I reviewed the new package, so I feel that I can participate in the review.
Great. Do we need to direct that or no? That's just a disclosure. Okay, thank you for disclosing that information. Are there any other disclosures for this evening? No? Hearing none, that moves us to our consent agenda, which we have nothing on our consent agenda, so we'll keep moving on to our unfinished business. Again, nothing there. And that brings us to our regular agenda, where we have one case before us tonight, case number 2011-141, our final site plan and landscape plan review for our public facility at for the proposed UAA Sports Arena, UAC Wolf Subdivision Track A. Could we have a staff report for that case?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a couple of housekeeping items I want to go over. One, there's a correction needed to the agenda. It says final site plan and landscape plan review, and this is just a final landscape plan review because we've approved the commission approved the site plan at the previous meeting. And not to say that if there are questions that the commission has about the site plan, they can, ask the petitioners for any clarification. Landscape sheets L102 and L104 show a hedge of cotoneaster with birch trees and 9-bark shrubs along the east edge of Elmore Road. Snow will be pushed from the road to the sidewalk, and then a trackless sidewalk blower and/or plow will blow snow to the side of the sidewalk. A cotoneaster hedge is very dense and may impede the ability of the sidewalk blower plow to blow snow that will penetrate the hedge. The blower chute is mounted at a height of just over 6 feet and may be able to blow snow over the hedge. I just wanted to bring that up. In terms of regarding the existing vegetation to remain and the provision of protection fencing during construction, there's a little bit of confusion about this, and Mr. Schoenthal has clarified that they intend to use snow fencing for the most part with chain link fencing for some portions of it and to protect the vegetation. And Mr. Schoenthal perhaps can clarify where the chain link fencing is going to go, and then we'll assume the rest of it is going to be snow fencing. A bike shelter as well as bike racks have now been designed and are shown outside the southeast corner of the building. The bike shelter will be cantilevered off the adjacent CMU wall and will match the specialty lights on the sidewalk, but the bike shelter is an additive alternate. The north and south entrances, will have snow melt systems. 4 benches are located on either side of the south building entry. Direct handicap access is provided from the accessible parking lot spaces to the building entrance. Pedestrian scale lighting is shown along sidewalks. Distinctive lighting is planned for the main pedestrian spine. The largest parking lot, and this is an issue that the Commission discussed quite a lot when the project was before them last time. The largest parking lot has sizable expanse of asphalt with 3 drainage swales and 3 infiltration basins. The swales will capture parking lot runoff and direct it to the infiltration basins. In significant storm events, the runoff will be directed to the adjacent wooded area, which is infiltration basin C, in the northeast corner of the site. Should the existing infiltration basin C become inundated, it will overflow into the municipal storm drain system by way of a catch basin. The landscape design of the Elmore Road Health Drive roundabout is shown in the March 22nd attachment. It's in your packet. Blue spruce trees are in the middle, ringed with flowering crabapple trees with cotoneaster and gold flame spirea shrubs comprising the outer rings. Mr. Schoenthal has laid on your on your desk before you a revised plan, and there are a few changes that I'm sure Mr. Schoenthal will highlight when he comes up, but we just want to be sure to include this drawing in the list of drawings that's shown on page 4. So just, it doesn't have a sheet number, but you could just simply refer to it as the revised drawing presented at tonight's meeting, dated April 11th, 2012, so we get it added to that list of drawings. That's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Pratt? Commissioner Pratt?
Yeah, thank you. There was a question in the letter dated March 28th, the response to the conditions. There seemed to be a little bit of confusion on the part of the applicant regarding what the conditions were. Are you satisfied that they understood the conditions that we articulated?
Yes, they went ahead and answered all of them, but I think that he understood that they were deleted and then replaced with one condition.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? Great. So that, would the petitioner like to make a presentation to the board? Oh, right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Terry Schoenthal. I'm with USKH here in Anchorage, and I represent the University of Alaska as the owner of the property and the petitioner in this case, seeking final landscape approval for the UAA Sports Arena. And with me tonight are John Weir from Kuhl Carlson Architects in the audience, and he can be available for any questions you might have relative to the architecture at this point, but I really think the focus is probably a little more on the landscape architecture for this approval. Also with me is Stan Vanover from the University of Alaska. He's the university project manager for this, and he can address questions that may have to do with scheduling or other aspects of the project. Also, I'd like to introduce a colleague of mine, Brianna Kiefer from our office, who has been assisting with development of the design of the project. As a starter, what I would really like to do is a couple of things that came up. You folks did give us, and I'm most appreciative of the site plan approval that you provided at our earlier meeting, but there were a number, as you've noted, of conditions in there, and I want to update you on a couple of the things that I think were some of the ones that were given a little higher priority at that meeting. One was there was a request to take a closer look at incorporating a tunnel under Wellness Drive near the roundabout area, and one of the conditions was that we consider that, and we have looked at it quite closely. The issue that we really face with it is that our original interpretation of it is that the bottom of that is very close to where groundwater would be. And one of the things you have to consider, once we explored it sort of from an engineering perspective, is it's 14 feet from the road surface to the trail level as you go under an underpass or trail like that. And at a 5% slope, or less than 5%, it takes a great deal of grade to catch back up to surface. So if you come under that underpass, we would have ended up having to take out most of the trees on either side of that to deal with the grading. And then we have the added cost of about $250,000 for the tunnel itself and for the other improvements that go along with that. We have a limited budget. It's sort of a zero-sum game, as it were, at this point, so that we have X amount of dollars to do the project. And so anything that would go into that at this point would have to come out of someplace else. And our sense in dealing with the state and with the city is that the roundabouts themselves have proven to have been reasonably good for pedestrians in the sense that traffic is calmed when they come into those areas. So pedestrians have visibility. And now our position on it is that it's hard for us to justify that cost for the amount of value of that particular roadway that we would get out of it. So we did consider it. We have not included it at this point, primarily because of cost. Another factor that came up in our earlier presentation was concern with respect to saving the trees that are over on the corner of Elmore and Providence. And what we did was we originally had planned not necessarily to simply dump the water into, the area that we're talking about, this is the new roundabout right here. It's a little off there, but right here. And the area we're talking about is right at the intersection of Providence Drive and Elmore Road. And the tree area that we're preserving is right on that corner. And the way that we're addressing drainage on this site, you can see there are 3 different colors that we've got included in here. And these each go to separate infiltration basins. And the main area, the largest area, goes to an infiltration basin that has the capacity for the 10-year flood. So that water will infiltrate unless there's some seriously big rainfall event. So the bulk of the site goes to that. The orange area that we've got right here, and including the roadway out, drains to an infiltration basin that's next to the wooded area here. And that also holds nearly it's between the 1 and the 10-year flood, but in most cases no water will go out of that, it'll simply infiltrate. And then in a really big event, the water would outflow from that into where the tree area is on the corner. But the maximum depth that water can get in the area where those trees are is just about 1 foot. And anything above that goes into the municipal storm drain system then. And by our calculations of the infiltration rate of the soils, it means that those trees could be inundated for a period of about 11 hours. In other words, that area will drain in a period of 11 hours, and that's not unusual in our community for birch trees and spruce trees to be inundated for that period of time and not have a difficulty surviving. So one of the issues that had come up, or we were asked, well, aren't you going to clear trees to create a basin on that corner? We're not, and what we're proposing to do is actually use the vegetation as part of the drainage and infiltration system itself. If you can leave vegetation in, it does a great job of cleaning the water and even encouraging infiltration. So that's really the approach we've taken on that. And it's sort of twofold. One is it does impact the landscape because we are preserving those trees on that corner for screening. But secondly, which we also think is really important, is we're trying to address as much of the storm drainage on the site as we can without dumping it into the municipal storm drain system. So we've looked at that pretty carefully, and that's the solution that we've come up with. I've provided you with an updated plan tonight, and the reason why I've done that is that we have, as you approach, this project is being done under what I would refer to as a GCCM approach to contracting, and that's where the contractor is involved in the project well before the construction documents are actually even complete. So there's this kind of give and take as the project progresses right up to the end with regard to costing and a variety of other things. Even now, there's more give and take on that. There's some budget issues relative to interior finishes and a variety of other things that all still have to be addressed. But on the site, we acknowledge that we really have to meet the requirements of Title 21. You've gotten a preliminary landscape and given us preliminary landscape approval for this. And in fact, in the plans that you have tonight, we have somewhat more landscape than what you saw at the last meeting. And there's a couple reasons for this. One is that we've reduced the actual concrete paved areas by about 15%. We've narrowed some of the walkways. We don't believe it's a substantive change to the plans as a whole, but by taking that concrete out and by adding additional landscape, we actually do see a cost savings that we can in the site and still accommodate all of the pedestrians that we have. And in fact, in our estimate, or by our own insight in it, I think we have a new landscape pocket that's at the front that can create a little more interest right in that area, which was all plaza before. So I think there's some actual benefits that come out of that. One of the conditions is that we take a look at re-landscaping areas where utilities go through. And by utilities, I'm not just talking about electrical. One of the things that we have on the site, if I can get it to the right place here, is that this is the area where there's an existing roadway that comes into the site right through here. This is the big parking lot right here. And we're revegetating that, but that doesn't have existing vegetation. And we're also bringing the new water main into the site at that location, because that way we don't have to clear vegetation elsewhere. So one of the conditions is that we provide new vegetation, new landscape in those locations, and this new drawing shows that. Overall, right now, we're showing about a 10% increase in landscape from the original drawings that you were provided. And one of the reasons for that is that the maintenance folks at the university wanted to minimize the amount of shrubs that were really in the project. And the reason, again, is that this is a highly active center. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that gets onto the site. There, you get litter and cups and other things that can get blown around and caught in shrubs, as they do at the Sullivan or another place where it gets a lot of traffic like this. And their preference would have been more trees, fewer shrubs. One of the things is we still have to meet the requirements of Title 21 landscaping around the parking lots and in the parking lots, which calls for a bit of added shrubs. And so what we've done is we went back to verify that we meet all the Title 21 requirements, and we do it this time with this drawing. We've added some shrubs in some of those areas to accommodate that. In areas where we've reduced sidewalk paving, we've also added some landscape. And that's really the crux of the changes that have happened since we were before you the last time. And I think with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the petitioner? Oh. Commissioner Sullivan.
I just have a fast question here. The facility is designed to meet LEED Silver standards, and I see that you are having a little trouble with the drainage of the water. Have you considered building a retention pond and utilizing the water for your irrigation system? I saw some plans with an irrigation system. I don't know if per the last meeting you guys were saying there's not in the budget. I don't know where's that at.
Well, that's a very good question. There's a quick coupler system, which is not an automated irrigation system, but this is a site that has water aplenty at this point, and the reason it does is that also part of the LEED Silver is we're looking at groundwater cooling for the building. And the result of that is right now we're looking at re-injecting that, but we can use any of that water for irrigation that we want. It's non-potable, it's groundwater, but we have more than enough to address that. We have the detention basins, but they really are infiltration. We've got great gravels and everything. We could put something under it that would make it so it doesn't infiltrate as fast. But fundamentally, our goal is to get that water to infiltrate into the ground as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia.
I have a question on L103. You got that sheet?
I don't have the L103 sheets, but if you ask me the question, I suspect I know the answer.
You pretty much have a good idea of the plan. There's a parking lot that's to the, well, how would I say it? It's to the south of that new drive, I believe, Wellness Drive.
Yes.
And I'm just looking at all the shrubs you have on the north side, and I understand that that parking lot is also supposed to be used for the arena. And I was just mentioning that you might want to consider a walk path to the sidewalk from the north of that to the sidewalk instead of having that treed and shrub, because mankind will make its own path if you don't.
It's a good comment.
And the other question I had is on the west side of the street. The sidewalk is right against the street, and I'm not sure if it's project limits reason, or I'm just wondering why that sidewalk doesn't have a space between the street, if there's not a lawn area between the street and the sidewalk.
The primary reason is that we're trying to preserve vegetation at that along that particular side. We have taken a look at that. There's a couple of issues. One is associated with utilities that are underneath there. And the second is that we didn't want to push that sidewalk any further into the site for fear of having to take more of the existing vegetation that's there.
Okay, yeah, because it shows a bunch of new trees that are lining the west side of the new sidewalk, so that's why I wasn't understanding. I'm sort of not understanding the existing vegetation, because it looks like it's all newly vegetated.
I think that might be the east side of it.
I'm right here, this street here. That's not Wellness Drive, I'm sorry, that's the, I don't know how to describe that right now, because I don't have the street names on the overall map.
Are we talking about this street right here?
No,
Housing.
the one that goes to Mac Housing, I guess, this is Mac Housing right here?
That's, yeah. So it looks like a park.
So it's the piece up by it's on this side of the parking lot over here?
So this sidewalk right here, I don't know how to, I could come down.
Are we talking about this one right here?
Yes, that one right there, correct. That's it. You see all the new trees that you have on the bottom side of the paper form on that sidewalk? That's the one I'm not understanding why there's not a space between the street and the sidewalk there, since it's all newly vegetated and new treed.
I can double check on that. To be honest, I don't have an answer on it right now. That may be an existing sidewalk.
Okay, just because it was showing as new on the civil, that's why I'm,
Oh, okay. Okay.
because that used to be where the cul-de-sac was, and that whole cul-de-sac
That's correct.
was demoed. So, and then, which leads me to my next question, which actually is about that. The new parking lot to the north of Mac Housing, if you look at civil sheet, which you don't have in front of you, it's civil 301. I'm assuming all your parking lots are going to be asphalt, correct?
They are.
So you're showing, or I shouldn't say you, the civil engineer, because I know that's not your scope of work, is showing grades of less than 1% for drainage. That's like, to be real, that's like impossible with asphalt, basically. I mean, you're going to get no drainage. So you basically are creating a huge settling pond on pavement. At least that's from my understanding of civil and how water drains on a
But this is not on the big parking lot. This is on the smaller one that you're talking about over.
Parking lot, I think it accommodates 25 or 30 parking spots. It's,
Okay.
no, it's this one right here. This parking lot right here.
Okay.
I mean, you're having less than 1% drainage on asphalt, and that's hard to achieve on concrete. So I think your civil engineer should really take a look at the drainage on that, because and you've got.
I think that's a valid comment, so.
Yeah. It's just something you should look at, or somebody should look at. Less than 1%'s really tough. So those were my comments that I saw based on drainage and some of the hard stand features that you've got.
Are there any other questions? Oh, okay. Commissioner Minsky?
Sure. I have one, I guess, kind of question, comment, discussion. On the infiltration basin C, the one that you talked about earlier, the one with the trees,
Yes.
I guess I'm just curious. I think it's a pretty unique solution. It's kind of interesting, but do you have any kind of maintenance, I guess, requirements for that area that might be different from other basins? I guess I don't see an issue with the flooding of it occasionally. If, like you said, if it infiltrates, I think that's probably not a big deal. But then do you see any issue with gravel from the parking lot filling up kind of over time and needing to be, I don't know, scraped out or?
I don't envision the need, but for one thing, it's the third basin down. I mean, if there's an overflow, it goes two basins, basically, that allow for settling before it gets to that. And then the area, that area does accommodate some smaller portion, excuse me, of the parking lot under normal circumstances. And at the end of winter, there will be some gravel near the edges of that parking lot, just as there are in most of our parking lots in town. And it will require some maintenance to clean that up. But what we're allowing for is a certain amount of space at the edges of all those parking lots before it enters the infiltration basin that allows for snow storage on that parking lot.
Sounds good.
Are there any other questions? No? Oh, sorry.
I have a very easy, fast question. Okay, you have the entry plazas on either side of the building are linear and spacious, which I think that's very nice. I'm a big fan of ADA. I see your ADA, where are they located? So I know that you have a snow melt system at each of the entries. What's the extent? Oh, I know it's expensive, but what's the extent?
The extent is not really large. The primary goal of the heat in this particular project is really to provide a kind of walk-off area near the front entries. We're not providing, the university does actually quite a good job of maintaining and keeping walkways clean. And so my sense is that in this particular case, the walkways will be accessible very well throughout, especially for a facility like this. They'll do a good job of taking care of that. But fundamentally, it's a relatively small area near both entries where the heated sidewalks are located, and what that does really is it provides sort of a walk-off area so that not all of that gets tracked into the interior.
Thank you.
Ms. Ferguson?
Thank you. A couple of questions. One, dealing with the existing vegetation. I think there's a storm drain system leading from the Providence Drive area, and I think there was some discussion that UAA was going to replant that area once the line goes in. And
There is, and that is, the roof drain, let me see if I can get it where it kind of comes down, but if the arena is right here, you can see this opening coming through here that goes out toward Providence Drive. And what that basically, that is the roof drain connection to the municipal storm drain. So there is an opening through the existing vegetation. We're not showing new plantings in there yet, but we intend to revegetate that. We just don't know exactly how wide that's ultimately going to be. We're going to keep it as narrow as we can, but the intent is to revegetate that.
Okay, great. And then south of the parking lot, there's another big area that's slated for preservation, but there's an odd triangle, white triangle in there where nothing is shown. What's thought to be in that
There's a
area?
current gap in that area right now. I mean, it's just lawn area that's in there.
Oh, okay. Any thought to revegetating that area?
We had not. I mean, we're providing street trees along the edge of that, but right now, it's not as abrupt as it looks like, really, if you were to go out and take a look at it on these plans, but there's a gap in the existing vegetation right at that location, and it's just surface vegetation as opposed to trees in that area.
So you said it's like natural grass or mowed grass?
It's not mowed grass, it's just low vegetation that's in there.
Okay, so it may grow up over time?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the intent, I guess?
It is. Our intent is not to do anything there. We're not adding new vegetation. It's not being maintained as a lawn area. It's just simply going to be what it is.
Okay. And then another thing about the planter that's south of that entry area in the plaza on the south that you've just added with this plan, is there a thought to make that a seating planter around it?
There are some other bench areas that are not far from that. We hadn't considered actually making it a seating planter in part because we don't want to add walls into the budget if we can help it at this point.
Okay.
Part of the reason it's come to fruition, really, or added that planter at this point, is because it is actually less expensive to have areas that are nicely planted like that than expensive, fine-tooled concrete and so forth. So.
Okay. And one other question. In the same plaza area, you show some bike racks, and then right next to it, it's white. The scoring pattern doesn't continue. What is the thought for that surface material there?
It's asphalt over in that area.
Oh, really? Well, that is a cost. So that was the cost-saving measure.
It was.
Okay.
But that's also not a heavily used area as heavily used area as the site as the concrete areas are. I mean, that leads over to the service area of the facility.
Commissioner Abel?
Yeah, I just had one quick question about snow removal in the large parking lot specifically. Is there any way that you're protecting the natural vegetation from excessive snow removal?
The way that well, right now, there is actually a barrier that's in the way, and that the infiltration basin itself drops down. It has a large sort of flat bottom before it comes back up to the existing vegetation. And then there's a space of approximately 15 feet between the edge of the parking lot and where the infiltration basin actually begins. So the intent is that there's about a 15-foot space where they can push snow. And in other university parking lots like this one, they'll push it there until, if it was a year like this, until they can't live with it anymore, and then they haul it. And that's what they, for example, do near the bookstore parking lot area over by the Wells Fargo Center now, is that they'll store snow until they know that they've got to get it out because they have an event coming or whatever. And that's how it'll be treated here as well.
It's just nice to know there's some natural protection, because I know what snowplow
Yep.
drivers do to natural trees. Thanks.
Are there any more questions? Great. Hearing none, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now the matter rests with the board. And could I get a motion to approve? This is moved by Commissioner Pratt. And a second from Commissioner Minsky. Would you like to speak to your...
I would. Thank you. We've actually spent quite a bit of time going over this. I really appreciate the applicant's...
I'm sorry, but could I have you state the motion first?
Oh, I'm sorry. I move that the commission approve on a final basis the plan submitted in case 2011-141.
And are there any conditions, subject to any conditions? Possibly adding the drawing?
I'm sorry, just subject to the conditions that I believe staff, let me see if I can,
One.
in staff memorandum of April 11th, subject to conditions 1, 2, 3, and 4, if one is still needed. Is one still needed?
Yes, and there
Okay.
needs to be added to that list of drawings, the updated or revised drawing that was presented this evening, dated April 11th, 2012.
Yes. So I recommend that we approve on a final basis, the plan submitted in case 2011-141, subject to the 4 conditions in the staff memorandum and subject to the addition of the UAA SSA plan sheet that's dated 11 April 2012.
Great, thank you. And it's commissioned by Commissioner Minsky. Now you'll be able to speak to your motion.
Yeah, we actually have spent a lot of time on this. I really appreciate the applicant's diligence responding to staff conditions. I've learned quite a bit, and I believe that this plan, it meets all the requirements of Title 21. I think that the applicant has done a really good job of balancing the needs of economics, of landscape standards, and in meeting the requirements. All of the conditions that were suggested in the earlier preliminary approval have been satisfied, as I understand it. And on the basis of satisfying all those conditions and complying with the code, I recommend approval.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Commissioner Garsha?
I'd like to add a friendly amendment, number 5. Go ahead, Phil. Tell me what I'm doing wrong.
I would rather you not do a friendly amendment, that you make it a motion so people can vote and speak to it.
You're right. I should make it a motion. I'd like to add. How do I do that, Jill?
Just move an
Make a
amendment.
motion. Can I make how do I make a motion to make an
Motion
amendment?
to amend and state what it is.
Okay, I'd like a motion to amend. I'd like to add item number 5, which I'd like to reference, which Sharon spoke to earlier, the hedges with the snow removal issue along, I can't remember where that was.
Elmore Drive, the west side.
Thank you. Along the west side of Elmore Drive. I believe the applicant should look at that and make sure that their current landscaping won't interfere with the use of that area. Feasibility. I'd also like to add that the applicant just look at the site drainage at the 2 parking lots where they have less than 1% slope on asphalt. There's actually 2 of them. And I'll be more than happy to hand you my drawings where I highlighted those areas after the meeting, unless I can figure some way to properly
Yep.
articulate
Could we get a
that.
clarification? Would you like to add a clause to those to say the applicant should resolve with staff those issues?
I believe resolving with staff is totally adequate.
Great.
And Mr. Chair, Mr. Garsha, I misspoke. It's the east side of Elmore Road.
Okay.
So
So there's,
am I allowed to make 5 and 6 together, or do we have to do them separately?
Do them separately, please.
Okay. That's fine.
could you do them separately?
So I'll do motion 5 first.
Okay.
Okay.
A second, because I'm going to have to.
What did you want, let me say why Okay.
Can you give me a minute to work with my system, please?
oh,
It's all in the one motion right at the moment, so give me just a second. Basically splitting the motion, and it's an amendment, so what we're going to.
So we'll put this motion on the floor and then get an amendment to remove that?
I'm just going to go ahead.
Okay.
I'll make it up.
Okay, great. Great, that's perfect.
Commissioner Garza,
Okay.
it is an amendment, and you really can't split the amendment, but because there's no seconder yet, and we haven't restated the motion, it still belongs to you, not to the floor, so if you want to delete half of it,
I would like
can.
to. Okay.
So we'll just limit it to item 5 first?
Yes, I'll clarify my motion in that we're
Okay.
just discussing that.
Give you 1 second to delete the other. Okay. And clarified. Go ahead.
That the applicant will
Resolve the staff.
resolve with staff the conflict with the hedges and the snow removal along the east side of Elmore Drive.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, seconded by Commissioner Abel.
And can he speak?
And can you speak to your motion?
I think staff had a very good insight into a possible design conflict, and I think it just behoove everybody's interest to have the applicant and staff review it and make sure that there is not a conflict and there won't be a utility issue with the site.
Are there any other commissioners that would like to speak to the amendment? Are there any objections to the amendment? Hearing none, Amendment 5 is added to the motion. And now we're back to the original motion as with the 5 conditions.
I've decided I do not have to add the amendment about the drainage. That's something they can look at. It's just a friendly observation that you really need more than 1% slope to drain water off of asphalt, and less than 1% won't be effective. So,
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the main motion on the floor?
I just, give me a minute for my system because there's a glitch in it. And I've got to put the motion in again because it recorded a vote and I didn't.
Okay.
Okay. So,
We'll be waiting just for a second.
the original seconder.
To the original,
Yeah, I know.
I think it was Commissioner Pratt that moved the original motion, and that it was seconded by, did you second that? Commissioner Abel, second, I think.
I'm sorry. I had no idea what to do. Okay.
We'll get there.
It's happened before, and I think there's a glitch in the program. I didn't touch it. Okay, main motion, as amended.
Yes.
We're back, we're ready.
All right, we're back to the main motion as amended. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak to the main motion? No? Well, I'm going to quick throw a little bit in here. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the careful look that the petitioner took at the better trail connectivity in the area with the separated path crossing, and I could tell that it was really carefully considered. And I think that trail connectivity will stay and be improved with that roundabout as outlined by the petitioner. So I think that's a really important part of this overall project, and it's appreciated that that careful look was actually given to that condition. So I'll be supporting the motion because I feel like it really does meet the conditions that we review these landscape plans under adequately. Now, is there any objection to passing the motion as amended? Hearing no objections, the motion as amended passes. And now, okay. Okay. Are there any reports from any of the commissioners?
I just have a question. Does the applicant have any use for all this paper? Because I really don't. No, I'm serious. You want an
Do you?
extra copy of? Because it's a lot of, seems like a lot of dead timber that, I'm sorry? Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comment? Can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, no.
No, I think you've all met our newest commissioner, Monica Sullivan. She's an architect, and we're very glad to have her on the commission. And that's all I have.
That's great, and we're full board now, right?
Yeah, we are.
Exciting
For
stuff.
the first time in a long time.
Yes. It's great to have you on board.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Garcia and second by Commissioner Abel.
Any
and
objections?
Any objections? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Bang the gavel.